The black man was seated in the luxurious business class cabin, but because of his skin color, he was targeted by the beautiful flight attendant. She showed an annoyed expression and demanded to check his ticket.
Ticket and ID card, sir. I need to verify if you're actually supposed to be in the business class cabin.
She claimed the ticket was a fake.
This is a sophisticated forgery. You can't just print a fake pass and expect to sit with the elite.
When the man didn't resist, she pushed her luck and declared that the seat belonged to someone else.
Is there a problem here? Because this man is currently sitting in my seat. I suggest he moves before things get ugly.
A wealthy-looking white man strode over and arrogantly claimed the seat as his own.
Grab your bags and get out of here. People like you don't belong in the front of the plane. Go find a stool in the back.
She even stripped the black man of his first-class ticket, brandishing it like a trophy.
Finally, a man of my stature shouldn't have to wait for his rightful place. Thank you, sweetheart.
Just an hour later, they would pay dearly for their actions. 5:30 in the morning, Buckhead, Atlanta. The espresso machine hissed in the kitchen of a penthouse that took up an entire floor. Cameron Ashford poured a single shot into a black ceramic cup. The window behind him showed the city still sleeping. 1,000 orange streetlights like scattered embers. His phone buzzed on the counter. Cameron, it was Daniel Brooks, COO, 12 years at his side. You're up early. I'm flying. Skybridge JFK at 8:15. Their CFO wants another sit-down about the capital injection. $5 billion is a lot of leverage for one airline. We'll talk on the ground. Stay close to your phone. Cameron ended the call. He looked at the Wall Street Journal spread across the Marble Island. Skybridge Airlines was in the lower right corner of the business section. Another headline about the baggage scandal eating into Q3 revenue. He'd read enough. He dressed the way he always dressed when he flew commercial. Navy suit tailored but plain. No tie, no watch, no cufflinks. A single Toomey carry-on by the door. His MacBook tucked under his arm like a textbook. Anonymity by design. Hartsfield-Jackson at 6:20. The terminal was already a wave of suitcases and tired faces. Cameron moved through priority screening, the way someone moves when they know exactly which line to stand in. The TSA officer at the metal detector glanced up, a small nod. Cameron nodded back. At the gate, the agent scanned his boarding pass. She paused. Her eyes flicked to the platinum tear stripe across the top of his card, then back to his face, then back to the card. She handed it back without a smile. Cameron didn't react. He'd seen the double take 1,000 times. He stopped at the Starbucks beside gate B12 and ordered a black coffee. The barista, early 20s, half awake, handed him the cup with a polite shrug of a smile. Have a good one, buddy. Cameron tipped $4 on a $5 coffee, walked on. He stepped onto Flight 802 at 6:53. The cabin smelled like recycled air and lemon disinfectant. The amber lights of first class were already glowing. Vanessa Hartwell was checking boarding passes at the door. She had the smile of someone who decides what she's going to think about a person before they reach her. She took Cameron's pass. She studied it. She turned it over. She studied it again. Then, she looked over her shoulder down the jet bridge, checking for someone else. 2A, she finally said flat. No greeting. Cameron took the pass back and walked to his seat. He slid into 2A, set his bag in the overhead, pulled out his MacBook, slipped on his Bose headphones. Not playing music yet, just building a wall. He scanned the cabin the way he always did. Quick, unobtrusive. Row 1B, a woman in her 50s, business traveler, headphones already on, eyes glued to a tablet, tired. Row 2C and 2D, a young white couple in matching athleisure, both scrolling, both checked out. Row 3A, a white man in his 40s, paperback novel open on his lap. His name was James Donnelly, NYPD off-duty, flying home to Brooklyn. He looked up when Cameron sat down. He looked up again when Vanessa took an extra 10 seconds with Cameron's boarding pass. Donnelly knew that look. He'd seen it before. Last spring, his sister's husband had been turned away from a steakhouse on Atlantic Avenue. Black, an engineer, navy blazer, the kind of guy who tipped 20% and held the door. Reservation in his name. The hostess said the table was no longer available. Donnelly had been at the bar 3 drinks deep. He'd watched the whole thing happen. He hadn't pulled out his phone that day. He hadn't said a word. He'd thought about it every Tuesday since. Now he set his paper back down. He slid his phone out of his shirt pocket. He opened the camera. He didn't press record yet, but his thumb hovered over the button just in case. Row 4B. An older white man in a Vietnam veteran cap, eyes already closed, asleep before takeoff. Outside the window, the September morning was turning pink at the edges. Skybridge Airlines was 6 weeks into a brutal PR crisis. A viral baggage handling video, 3 executive resignations, an earnings call on Thursday. The analysts were already calling a bloodbath. The cabin door was still open, boarding still in progress. That's when the voice rolled in from the jet bridge. Loud male already annoyed. "Where's my seat? I don't have all morning for this." Vanessa's face brightened. She turned toward row 2. Preston Caldwell rolled into first class like he owned it. Wrinkled blazer, oversized gold watch flashing on his wrist, a cloud of cologne strong enough to wake the veteran in row 4B from his nap. He didn't bother greeting the flight attendants at the door. He just kept moving down the aisle. "Mr. Caldwell." Vanessa's voice climbed an octave. "Right, this way, sir. We have you in 2A. Preston stopped at row 2. He looked down at Cameron, his upper lip curled. "There's somebody in my seat." He said it loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Let me handle it, sir." Vanessa stepped past Preston and planted herself at the edge of Cameron's row. Her hand landed on the back of seat 2B. Her smile thinned. "Sir, we have a small reassignment to make." Cameron pulled off one side of his headphones. "I'm sorry. You'll need to gather your things." Her voice rose, projecting to the whole cabin. "Mr. Caldwell is one of our Diamond Vive IPs, a real first-class passenger. We need 2A for him." Cameron set his MacBook aside. Slow. "Careful. I'm Diamond Elite. This is the seat I paid for." "Are you, though?" Her head tilted. The question wasn't a question. It was a weapon. Behind her, Preston let out that laugh again. That slow, ugly laugh. He folded his arms across his chest. "Some of us actually pay full fare, pal." The woman in 1B turned her head a fraction. She didn't look at Cameron. She looked at Vanessa. Then she turned back to her tablet. The young couple in 2C and 2D went perfectly still. The girl kept scrolling Instagram. Donnelly in 3A pressed the red button on his phone. The camera was rolling now. "What's your name?" Cameron asked her. His voice stayed level. "And your employee number, please." "My name doesn't matter, sir. What matters is that you gather your things and move." "Move where?" "Seat 22F, Chief." She held up a tablet with the rebooking. The seat was a middle row 3 orders of the way back wedged between a man with a neck pillow and a woman already asleep. A 6-hour layover in Charlotte was tacked onto the itinerary. "My ticket is for 2A. I paid for 2A 3 months ago. I'll need to see ID. You scanned my ID 3 minutes ago at the door. I need to see it again." Cameron reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out his license. He handed it to her. Calm, the way a man does when he knows the eyes of the whole cabin are now on him. She held the license up. She looked at the photo. She looked at his face. She looked at the photo again. She made it last. Cameron Ashford. She read the name like she was tasting something sour. "And how did you pay for this ticket?" "Mr. Ashford, I beg your pardon. Cash, credit? Was it an employer booking?" "It was a personal purchase." Her eyes narrowed. "We've had a lot of trouble lately with people trying to sneak into first class on discounted upgrades. I just need to verify." Cameron's jaw tightened. His hands stayed flat on the armrests of 2A. That's not something you verify by interrogating the passenger. And was this booking made through a corporate account? She pressed on. Sometimes employers make mistakes on the tier. Happens all the time. It was my account. And what kind of work do you do, Mr. Ashford? Cameron stared at her. I don't have to answer that, and you know it. Preston barked a laugh from the aisle. Just tell her, pal, we've got a flight to catch. Excuse me, you have my reservation in your system. Pull it up. Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to cooperate. Her voice rose again, that public projection. Or I'll have to call the captain. Cameron pulled out his phone. He opened the camera. He started recording. Sir, you cannot record airline personnel. Yes, I can. FAA Case Law 2019. Pikes versus Continental. Vanessa's smile died entirely. She turned on her heel and stalked toward the galley. Captain Russell Whitfield came back 90 seconds later, mid-50s, silver hair under a flat-brimmed cap, the kind of man who had flown jumbo jets for 30 years and just wanted to make his on-time stat for the quarter. Vanessa got to him first. She spoke fast, low. He's been hostile. He's recording staff. He's refusing the reseeing. Captain, I need him off the plane. Whitfield's eyes flicked to Cameron, then to Preston, still standing in the aisle, arms folded. Then to the woman in 1B, who was very carefully looking at her tablet. Sir, Whitfield said to Cameron. His tone was the trained tone of a man who had done this twice this month already. I need you to step into the galley with me so we can sort this out. Cameron looked at the captain for a long second. He looked at the cabin door, where the rest of the boarding line was now watching this happen. He looked at Vanessa's face, the triumph she was trying to hide. He stood. The whole cabin went silent. Cameron's hands, the ones that had stayed flat on the armrests through every question, finally moved. He reached up to the overhead compartment. He lifted his Toomey out himself. He did not let anyone touch his bag. The sound in that moment wasn't really silence. It was the small things you only hear when everything else has stopped. The hum of the air system, the click of someone's seatbelt being unlatched, a baby crying 2 rows back in economy, the wheels of Cameron's Toomey rolling out of the overhead and across the carpeted floor. One slow click at a time, he stepped into the aisle. Preston was waiting. He didn't move out of the way. He waited until Cameron was within arm's reach, and then he stepped not aside, but forward. Their shoulders collided. Preston grunted. He did not apologize. People like you. Preston said soft enough that only the front of the cabin could hear. Always make a scene. Cameron stopped. He turned. His voice was very, very quiet. What people exactly? Preston smirked. You said it, not me. Vanessa snatched Cameron's boarding pass from his hand. She held it up, high, exaggerated, theatrical, so the whole cabin could see. This passenger has been removed. In row 4, an 8-year-old white boy in a brave cap tugged on his mother's sleeve. Mommy, why are they making that man leave? The mother pulled him close. She whispered something into his hair. She did not answer the question. Snorts. The boy kept staring at Cameron all the way down the aisle. Donnelly in 3A had his camera angled perfectly. He was holding it like a sleeping baby. Low, casual, lens up. He caught the boarding pass in Vanessa's hand. He caught Preston's smirk. He caught the boy's question. He caught the mother who couldn't answer it. He caught all of it. Cameron walked down the aisle without looking back. Captain Whitfield walked behind him. The cabin door closed. Preston dropped into seat 2A. He stretched his legs into Cameron's footwell. He looked at the young woman in 2D, then up at the flight attendant who had just appeared in his row. Her name tag said Hannah. She was 22. This was her 4th month on the job. Champagne, sir. Pour me one, sweetheart. Preston grinned. He tapped the rim of the empty flute on his tray. Your hands are a lot prettier than the one that was sitting in the seat. And honestly, the whole cabin smells better now. Hannah's smile froze. She didn't know what to say. She had been trained for medical emergencies, evacuations, turbulence procedures. Nobody had trained her for this. Preston leaned back. He raised his voice, loud, performative, talking to the whole row. Now, some folks just don't get it. First class isn't for everyone. It's for people with taste. In row 1B, the woman with the tablet set the tablet down. She turned. She looked at Preston. She looked at him for a long moment, the kind of look a 50-year-old woman gives when she has just decided something very specific. Then she turned back to her tablet. She did not speak. But 3 weeks later, the woman in 1B would be the one who picked up the phone. When an investigative journalist at the Atlanta Sentinel went looking for a corroborating witness from this flight, she would be ready. Chief. In the galley behind the curtain, Cameron set his bag down. Vanessa stood at the front of the cabin, framed in the open doorway. She watched Preston settle into 2A and signal for a second glass of champagne. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had no idea what she had just done. The galley curtains swept shut behind them. Vanessa was already on the intercom. Ground security to gate B12. Disruptive passenger. Now, Captain Whitfield raised one hand. Vanessa, let's slow down. He threatened me, Captain. He didn't threaten you. I watched it on the cabin camera. His tone, Captain, you don't understand. Whitfield rubbed the back of his neck. He had a wife, 2 kids in college, and 11 years left on his pension. He looked at Cameron. He looked at Vanessa. He looked at the cabin door where a line of boarding passengers was still staring through the gap. He chose the easier road. Sir, Whitfield said to Cameron, let's step off the plane and let ground sort this out. It'll be faster. It would not be faster. The jet bridge swallowed them in fluorescent light. 2 TSA officers stood at the far end, hands clasped in front of them, faces neutral. A man in a Navy Skybridge ground supervisor blazer was waiting with them. His name tag said Wilson. Gregory Wilson. 6 years in the position, 4 written commendations, 11 complaints from passengers of color. Every one of them filed quietly and dismissed quietly. He did not look at Cameron. He looked at Vanessa. What do we have? Hostile passenger refused reassignment. Recording staff, captain wants him off. Wilson nodded once. He turned to Cameron. Sir, I'm going to need you to step off the bridge with me. For what reason? Security clearance. I cleared security 90 minutes ago. We're going to need to do it again. Open the bag. Cameron set his Toomey down on the carpeted floor. He unzipped it. He did not protest. He did not yank his hands back when Wilson reached inside. Wilson pulled out the MacBook. He held it up to the fluorescent light like a piece of evidence. This is unusual. It's a laptop. It's a high-end laptop. It's a Pro. They sell them at the airport. And the phone? Cameron handed over his phone. Wilson tapped the screen. It was locked. He frowned. Unlock it. No, sir. I'm asking you to cooperate, and I'm asking what probable cause you're operating under. Wilson didn't answer that. He couldn't answer that. He turned and walked toward a door in the side of the jet bridge, a windowless service door. Cameron had walked past it 100 times without ever noticing. In here, sir, the room was about 10 feet by 12. Bare drywall, 1 folding chair, camera in the corner with a red light that wasn't blinking. The kind of room nobody who works in this industry will tell you exists. Wilson set the Toomey on a metal table. He didn't open anything else. He just made Cameron stand there with him for a full 3 minutes in silence. The fluorescent overhead made a faint electric whine, the kind you only hear in a small room with no windows. You know, Wilson finally said, people who run when they're innocent don't usually need to ask if they're detained. I haven't run anywhere. You walked me in here. Just an observation, sir. Then Vanessa appeared in the doorway. He was aggressive. I have witnesses. The TSA officer behind her, a younger man, late 20s, Name tag Reyes winced. Just a flicker. He had been there for the entire boarding. He had seen exactly what happened. He said nothing. Mr. Ashford Wilson finally spoke. We've rebooked you on a different carrier. Code share. Departure in 4 hours. Middle seat. Connection in Charlotte. We can have your bag delivered. Am I being detained? Wilson blinked. What? Am I being detained or am I free to go? Sir, this is a security matter. Am I being detained? A long beat. The fluorescent buzzed overhead. Wilson glanced at the TSA officers behind him. Reyes wouldn't meet his eyes. You're free to go. Then I'm leaving this room. Cameron picked up his Toomey. He walked past Wilson without looking at him. He walked past Vanessa without looking at her either. The TSA officers, Reyes, held the door open for him on the way out, eyes still on the floor. As Cameron reached the threshold, he stopped. He turned. He spoke to Wilson without raising his voice. Your camera in the corner. The light isn't on. That's a problem. Wilson looked at the camera, his mouth opened. Cameron was already walking out. Up in the cabin, Flight 802 was still on the ground, engines spooling. Hannah was making her third pass down the aisle with the champagne tray. Preston had switched his attention to a different junior flight attendant, a woman named Brittany. She looked 23. She was praying for the door to close. You ever model, sweetheart? Brittany's smile was carved out of glass. No, sir, you should. You've got the cheekbones for it. In 3A, Donnelly was filming the whole thing. In 1B, the businesswoman with the tablet had stopped pretending to read. She was watching Preston very directly now. She did not look away. Cameron walked out of the windowless room. He walked back through the jet bridge. The boarding line was gone now. The cabin door was closed. Somewhere down the corridor, a gate agent was reading from a tablet to an empty desk. He stopped in front of the floor-to-ceiling window facing the tarmac. Flight 802 was already pulling back from the gate. He sat on a metal bench. The amber morning sun was catching the edge of the airport glass. His own reflection came back to him. Gray suit, no tie, his glasses slightly crooked from the shoulder collision with Preston in the aisle. He set his Toomey at his feet. He laced his fingers together in his lap. An elderly black woman in a wheelchair rolled past. Her aide was pushing her toward gate B11. She turned her head. She looked at Cameron, really looked at him. He met her eyes. She nodded. He nodded back. She did not say anything. She did not have to. The wheelchair rolled on. Cameron looked down at his right hand. It was shaking. Just a small tremor, the kind nobody else would notice if they weren't looking. He flexed his fingers. He flexed them again. He pressed his palm flat against his thigh. 90 minutes of pressed-down anger sitting in the space between his shoulder blades. He let it sit there. He inhaled slow. He exhaled slower. The 802 was on the taxiway now, picking up speed. He took out his phone. His thumb moved to his contacts. It went to the wrong name first. An old attorney he hadn't spoken to in months. He backed out. He scrolled. He tapped Daniel Brooks. 2 rings. Cameron, you should be in the air. Daniel, where are you? I'm at the gate. They took me off the plane. Silence on the other end just for a second. Daniel had worked beside Cameron for 12 years. He didn't ask why. What do you need? What's our current Skybridge position? 5.2 billion. Why? The 802 was at the end of the runway now. Lining up. Liquidate all of it. Another silence longer. All 5 billion. VWAP execution. Finish before close. File the 13F amendment same day. I want this completed before the market knows what hit it. Cameron, are you safe? The first sound out of Cameron's mouth in 2 hours that was not measured. A small, dry, almost amused breath. The thinnest smile of the morning. I'm fine, Daniel. Just do it now. Done. Cameron lowered the phone. The 802 rolled forward. The engines climbed. The nose lifted off the tarmac and climbed into a sky that had finally gone full daylight gold. One, 200 miles north on the 42nd floor of Skybridge Airlines headquarters in Chicago. A junior trading analyst named Brett Holloway looked at his Bloomberg terminal. He went very, very still. "Mr. Lawson," he said it without taking his eyes off the screen. Mr. Lawson, sir, you need to see this." Theodore Lawson, chief financial officer of Skybridge Airlines, walked over with a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked at the screen. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "That's Ashford Strategic Capital." "Yes, sir, they're dumping." "Yes, sir." "How much?" The analyst swallowed. "All of it, sir. 5 billion. The cup of coffee hit the floor. Lawson didn't notice. He was looking at the live stock price on the right edge of the screen. It was already moving. Sell pressure cascading. The number was a flickering red blur. "Get me Hammond." His voice was very calm. Now the analyst was already reaching for the phone. At gate B12 in Hartsfield, Jackson, Cameron Ashford was already standing up. He picked up his Toomey. He turned toward the Skyub lounge. The departure board above the empty gate, red light 802 departed. In Chicago, the trading floor had been replaced by a single number. The stock had been moving for 96 seconds, down 11% and falling. The sell side of the book was a wall of red. Theodore Lawson held a phone to his ear. "Walter, boardroom, 2 minutes, don't ask." Walter Hammond, 62, chairman of Skybridge for 9 years, walked in, buttoning his shirt collar. "What?" Lawson pointed at the screen. Ashford Strategic Capital filed a 13F. They liquidated their entire Skybridge position. 5 billion, stock down 22%. Ashford. Hammond touched the name on the screen. "Pull up his account." Cameron's profile filled the screen. Hammond read it aloud. Founder and CEO, Ashford Strategic Capital, 40 billion under management. Our third largest institutional shareholder. Diamond Elite Plus VIP designation permanent, signed in 2019. The room was silent. Hammond turned around. He looked at 12 of the highest paid executives in commercial aviation. A flight attendant of ours threw the actual VIP off the plane to make room for a man whose only qualification was a cousin on this board. A vice president closed his eyes. "Get me the company jet now." 90 minutes later in the Sky Club at Hartsfield Jackson, Cameron Ashford was on his second cup of black coffee. He had ignored 41 calls. He had turned off notifications after the 10th urgent email. Soft jazz overhead, the smell of espresso. A handful of business travelers tactfully not looking at him. 3 men in suits came in through the glass doors at a near jog. They stopped at Cameron's table. He finished his email. He hit send. Only then did he raise his eyes. "Mr. Ashford." The silver-haired man's voice was horsaro. "I am Walter Hammond, chairman of Skybridge. I just flew in from Chicago, please." Cameron looked at him for a long second. He gestured to the chair across the table. "Sit." Hammond sat. So did Lawson. So did Richardson Blake, head of investor relations. Hammond took out a printed sheet. His eyes were already wet. Diamond Elite Plus VIP designation permanent. 3 weeks ago, you came to our headquarters. I shook your hand in our boardroom. Cameron took a slow sip of coffee, and this morning, my flight attendant, my ground supervisor, they treated you like Hammond, could not finish the sentence. Around the lounge, the careful not looking had become a careful listening. Hammond opened the leather portfolio. Inside was a signed blank check, an offer letter for a board advisory seat, a written commitment to terminate Vanessa Hartwell, Gregory Wilson, and anyone else Cameron might name. His hands were trembling. "Mr. Ashford, I'm begging you, reverse the sell order. We will do anything. I will fire myself if you ask. I'm 62. My career doesn't matter. But this company employs 42,000 people. Please tell me what to do." He slid the portfolio across the table. Then he did something nobody expected. He stood up. He walked around the table to Cameron's side. He did not kneel. Cameron would not have allowed him to kneel, But he placed one hand on Cameron's shoulder, the touch of a man who had run out of language. Cameron looked at the hand. He looked up at Hammond's face. He set his coffee down. His voice was level. Each word landed like a stone dropped into still water. "Mr. Hammond, sit down." Hammond sat. "This morning, when I was sitting in seat 2A, I was not a billionaire. I was not a shareholder. I was not a CEO. I was a black man holding a boarding pass. And that is how your employees treated a black man holding a boarding pass." The lounge had gone silent. "You are not apologizing to me today because they mistreated me. You are apologizing because they mistreated the man who just pulled $5 billion out of your stock. Those are not the same thing." Hammond opened his mouth. Cameron lifted one hand. "I will not reverse the sell order. The order completed 11 minutes before you walked into this room. Your stock price is not my problem. It is the consequence of your company's culture." He pushed the portfolio back across the table. "I don't want your check. I don't want a board seat. I don't need you to fire anyone to make me feel better. The court system will decide that part. The apology you owe me, you cannot pay it." A real apology would have looked like Skybridge training Vanessa Hartwell differently 14 years ago. Or like Skybridge listening to the 11 black passengers who filed complaints about her before me. You cannot go back in time, so don't apologize to me. Apologize to them. Hammond's eyes were full. "Now, please, you and these gentlemen will get up from my table. I'm trying to drink my coffee." Hammond did not move at first. Lawson touched his shoulder. "Walter, let's go." The three men stood. Hammond hesitated. "Mr. Ashford, I understand." Cameron did not answer. He was already typing again. When they disappeared through the glass doors, Cameron closed his eyes for one slow second. His hand was still shaking under the table. Nobody saw. In the Atlanta Sentinel newsroom, an investigative reporter named Olivia Sterling opened a video. It came from a contact in the NYPD union, a friend of James Donnelly. She watched it twice. She called her editor. By dinner time, the headline was live. "Black billionaire CEO removed from first class by Skybridge stock traders." Within the hour, the hashtag was National Hass Skybridge Shame. Within 90 minutes, a second hashtag tore through Twitter even faster. Real first-class passenger. A mockery of every word Vanessa Hartwell had said. By noon, Flight 802 had landed at JFK. Vanessa Hartwell stepped off the jet bridge to a different welcome than she had expected. 2 Skybridge HR officers and 1 corporate attorney were waiting for her on the New York side. They did not smile. They did not greet her. "Miss Hartwell, you're suspended without pay, effective immediately. Surrender your badge and uniform. We will speak with you formally within 24 hours. Vanessa's hand shook as she unclipped the gold name tag, 14 years of service, from her chest. The pins scraped the fabric of her blouse on the way out. 4 hours later, the suspension became a termination. By 3:00 p.m. Eastern, Gregory Wilson was on administrative leave. By the next morning, he was unemployed. By the close of business, Richardson Blake was also gone. The Skybridge press release used the words "failed to protect a core institutional relationship." Everyone in the industry understood what that meant. 2 members of the Skybridge board, including Preston Caldwell's cousin, resigned before they could be summoned to testify. Their resignation letters were dated the same day. They used the same template. Captain Russell Whitfield held a careful lawyered public statement. He admitted on the record that the purser had misled him about the nature of the incident. He did not say the word racism. His attorney would not let him. Everyone watching knew what he was saying. In the cabin behind that statement, a 22-year-old flight attendant named Hannah gave a full account of her interactions with Preston to Skybridge HR. She Snorts was offered protection, a promotion, and a confidential settlement. She accepted the first two and declined the third. She wanted her testimony on the record. At 9:00 p.m., Walter Hammond posted a personal apology video to Skybridge's corporate Twitter. The comments were savage. 3 million views by midnight, none of them friendly. 12 hours after Flight 802 took off without him, Cameron Ashford was in his office, 18th floor of a glass tower in Midtown Atlanta. He was on a call with his general counsel, Patricia Reeves. Downstairs in the lobby, Vanessa Hartwell stood at the reception desk. She had no appointment. She had no makeup. Her eyes were puffy in the particular way that comes from crying in a car for an hour. The receptionist had instructions. "Ma'am, Mr. Ashford is not available. Please, I just need 5 minutes. Ma'am, he's not available." Cameron watched her on the lobby camera feed for almost 2 minutes. He did not move from his chair. Vanessa left a handwritten letter at the desk, 3 pages. The bottom of the 3rd page was wet where her tears had landed. When the letter reached him upstairs, he read it once, he read it twice. He laid it flat on the desk between his coffee and his keyboard. He picked up the phone. "Patricia Cameron," she wrote to me. 3 pages. She has 2 children. She's getting divorced. She'll lose her house. She's begging me to be, and I quote, "a better man than she has been." A long silence. She doesn't mention the 11 passengers who came before me. Not a single line, not one sentence. Cameron, she is not sorry for what she did. She is sorry she did it to the wrong person. File this letter with the court. Continue the case. Preston Caldwell did not write a letter. He called Cameron's office 9 times in 3 days. He left voicemails that ranged from indignant to desperate. On the 3rd day, he showed up at the tower in person. He stood in the lobby and shouted, "I need to see Mr. Ashford." "This is a misunderstanding. I don't have a racist bone in my body. My wife has a black friend." 2 security guards walked him out. He resisted. Pedestrian on Peachtree Street filmed the whole thing on his phone. The caption went viral within a day. "VIP wants his apology." CEO is still in a meeting through Patricia Reeves. Cameron issued a single public statement, 83 words long. It ended every news cycle for the next 3 days. "This morning, I was treated by Skybridge Airlines not as a customer, not as a shareholder, but as a problem to be removed. The action I took with my funds holdings was a fiduciary decision based on the company's demonstrated culture, not a personal grievance. Other actions will follow through the appropriate legal channels." He did not give interviews. He did not appear on cable news. He did not need to. The video was doing the talking. 6 weeks passed. The Department of Transportation opened a formal civil rights investigation into Skybridge Airlines. The FAA cooperated. The AY's particular interest was the windowless service room on the jet bridge at Gate B12. The room with the camera that wasn't recording. The room where Cameron Ashford had been detained without probable cause. Cameron's civil suit was filed in the Northern District of Georgia. The named defendants were Skybridge Airlines, Vanessa Hartwell, Gregory Wilson, and Preston Caldwell. The damages requested were $35 million. Cameron's lawyers had warned him to ask for more. He told them no. He had a specific number in mind and a specific place he intended to send it. Discovery began, and what discovery uncovered was worse than anyone had expected. Vanessa Hartwell had 11 internal complaints filed against her over the previous 6 years. Every one of them came from a passenger of color. Everyone had been dismissed by Gregory Wilson with the same boilerplate language. Review concluded no further action. But that was not the headline. The headline was a text message, Norts. 20 minutes before boarding on the morning of Flight 802, Vanessa Hartwell had sent a message from her personal phone to Preston Caldwell's personal phone. It read, "Got you a welcome." Subpoenaed financial records showed why. 3 months earlier, Preston had personally delivered a $2,000 prepaid Visa card to Vanessa at a Skybridge employee parking garage. He had done it twice before that. He had been doing it for years. Every flight Preston booked on Vanessa's route ended the same way. He got a better seat than the one on his ticket, usually a seat that belonged to someone else. This was not implicit bias. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a bribery scheme. Every single one of the 11 Black and Latino passengers who had been bumped down to make room for Preston. They had not been reseated for operational reasons. They had been sold. The federal hearing was held in Atlanta before Judge Eleanor Marsh. Cameron took the stand for 40 minutes. He answered every question the same way he had spoken to Hammond in the Sky Club. Level, factual. He never raised his voice. The full unedited Donnelly video was played in open court, the boy in the Braves cap asking why they were making that man leave. 3 different news anchors would later cite that exact moment as the time they cried during their evening broadcasts. Vanessa Hartwell's defense fell apart the moment her text message hit the screen. Her attorney requested a recess. The judge granted 10 minutes. When they came back, Vanessa changed her plea. Hannah took the stand on the second day. She wore the same conservative suit she had worn to her job interview at Skybridge 4 months earlier. She did not cry. She read her statement from a single sheet of paper. She named Preston Caldwell. She named every comment he had made. When she finished, she folded the paper in half and put it back in her purse. A Latina passenger named Mrs. Delgado testified on the same day. She had been bumped from 4A to a middle seat on a Skybridge flight 19 months earlier. The discovery records now showed why. It had been for a Preston Caldwell upgrade. Mrs. Delgado was 68. She had filed a complaint at the time. Gregory Wilson had closed it within an hour. She told the court she had stopped flying Skybridge after that. She had also stopped trusting that anyone in a uniform would believe her. The jury did not need a recess. Chief Walter Hammond took the stand on the third day. He was 62 and looked older than that now. He had resigned from the chairmanship the week before. His attorneys had called it removing personal liability exposure. Everyone in the courtroom knew the real reason. He testified for an hour and a half. He took personal responsibility for the culture of his company. The plaintiff's attorney asked whether Skybridge had a written anti-discrimination policy. Hammond's answer was the line that would run in every newspaper the next day. On paper, yes. In practice, no. We had a policy. We did not have a culture. That was my fault. Then he did something no one expected. He turned toward the gallery. He found Cameron Ashford sitting in the plaintiff's row. He spoke directly to him. Mr. Ashford, I apologized to you in the Sky Club that morning. You were right to refuse it. Today, I'm not apologizing to you. Today, I'm apologizing to the 11 Black and Latino passengers Vanessa Hartwell mistreated before you. I'm apologizing to every passenger of color who flew with us during the 14 years she worked for this company. I failed them. I have no excuse. The courtroom was silent. Cameron nodded once. That was the whole of his response. There was no hug. There was no orchestrated forgiveness scene. Hammond understood. He sat down. The verdicts came down across the following weeks. Skybridge Airlines settled Cameron's civil suit for $35 million. Cameron donated every cent of it through a press release shorter than the one that ran his name. The recipient, the National Coalition for Black Air Travelers, the CEO of Skybridge, and 2 more board members resigned. The stock lost another 18% over the quarter. Vanessa Hartwell was terminated. The FAA permanently banned her from working in the airline industry. The Department of Justice indicted her for federal wire fraud, the bribery scheme. She pleaded guilty. 18 months of federal probation, $50,000 in fines, public public licensing record that would follow her for the rest of her life. Gregory Wilson was fired. He faced federal civil rights penalties for his systematic dismissal of the prior complaints. Preston Caldwell was convicted of federal bribery. He was sentenced to 14 months in federal prison. His real estate firm filed for restructuring. His cousin's resignation letter from the Skybridge board was entered into evidence. The story ran on 60 Minutes. Olivia Sterling won a regional journalism award. James Donnelly was profiled by the New York Times under a headline that simply read, "He pressed record." Cameron gave only one on-camera interview during the entire ordeal. A 5-minute clip filmed in his Atlanta office, his hands folded on a wooden desk. No lights, no makeup. In it, Cameron Ashford declined to call himself a hero. "I had leverage. I used it. Most people don't have $5 billion to pull." That is the real problem. He looked at the camera. The next time this happens, it won't be a billionaire in 2A. It will be a teacher or a nurse or somebody's grandmother. And they won't have a fund to liquidate. They'll only have a phone. We have to be the ones who make sure their phone is enough. The clip ended. 6 months passed. The September morning Cameron Ashford had walked through Hartsfield. Jackson had become something else now. A news cycle, a federal verdict, clip embedded in a 100 journalism school case studies. The National Coalition for Black Air Travelers had used his $35 million to open 3 legal aid offices in Atlanta, Houston, and Detroit. The first one opened in February. They named it the Donnelly Center after the off-duty officer who pressed record. Donnelly accepted the honor in person. He brought his sister and her husband, the engineer, and the Navy blazer, the one who had not been served at the steakhouse last spring. The Ashford Foundation was a separate philanthropic arm Cameron set up the month after the verdict. It partnered with 3 commercial airlines on a new anti-discrimination training curriculum. None of those 3 was Skybridge. Skybridge had been too publicly damaged to lead anything. Their chief equity officer was appointed in November as a condition of the due settlement. He would spend his first year in the job mostly answering subpoenas. On a Thursday in late March, Cameron Ashford walked back through Concourse B at Hartsfield-Jackson's. This time, the airline was different. The crew was different. The cabin smelled like coffee and warm muffins from the Gateside Bakery, not lemon disinfectant. The gate agent scanned his boarding pass. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford. Welcome aboard." That was the whole interaction. Cameron walked down the jet bridge and turned right at the cabin door. He sat in 2A. He set his Toomey in the overhead. He pulled out his MacBook. He slipped on his Bose headphones. Across the aisle in 2B, a young black woman in her early 30s was settling into her seat, business suit, laptop bag, the kind of poise that people develop after they have learned to walk into rooms that don't think they belong there. She caught his eye. She knew exactly who he was. She nodded. He nodded back. That was the whole exchange. The plane pushed back from the gate. The engines climbed. The nose lifted off the tarmac. The morning sky was the same daylight gold. He went back to his email. Somewhere over the Corollas, a news ticker on the seatback screen scrolled past a headline that was already 4 days old. Skybridge names. First Chief Equity Officer Independent Diversity Audit goes public. Flight attendant, a middle-aged woman whose name tag said Joanne, came down the aisle. "Coffee? Mr. Ashford?" "Yes, please." Black. She poured it. She moved on. There was no double take. There was no pause. There was no studying of the boarding pass. That was the whole exchange. Cameron Ashford drank his coffee. In the seat behind him, somewhere over Virginia, the young black woman in 2B opened a notes app on her phone and started typing. She had been a junior associate at a Manhattan law firm 2 years ago. Now, she ran her own practice. She was on her way to JFK for a meeting with a client who she suspected was about to become her largest. She did not know it yet. But she was going to remember this flight, not because anything happened on it, because nothing did. That, in the end, was the point. If you had been the woman in 1B on that September morning, phone in your lap, the whole thing happening 4 feet from your face, the video easily within reach, would you have pressed record? Would you have said something? Or would you have looked away? The answer matters because Cameron Ashford had $5 billion of leverage in his pocket that morning. Most people do not. Most people have a voice and a phone and the choice to use both. That has always been enough. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, made you think, made you remember a moment when you saw something you wished you had recorded, drop a comment below. Tell us what you would have done. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe for more stories about justice, dignity, and the quiet courage it takes to press record when nobody else will. The plane crossed the Hudson on schedule. It landed at JFK on time. A man in a gray suit walked through the gate, claimed no bag, hailed a yellow cab, and disappeared into the city. He had a meeting at 10:00 Viest Duant Hook Ngun Chokochuin.